Hello everyone. Aha, microphone works today. Good stuff. That's a good start. Just going to get myself set up. So I've had microphone and live issues since I began this experiment. So we have now a slightly different setup. I have my old recording mic, which is Ace, but also quite sensitive. So I apologize in advance if it picks up absolutely everything. I have played with the settings and hopefully it's better. But at least you can hear me this time. So that's good news. Also, I have my dog, Wilson, who refuses to go anywhere other than this room. And he is on high alert as he hears people come and go in the flats I'm in. So if you hear some barking, you know who it is. How's everyone doing today? Feel free to say hello in the chat. Today, on the rigging situation, if you watched the second one, you will have seen that I got to the point where I'd started to make the head and things were starting to be put together. I was drawing them out. So we have this design that I've kind of faded out underneath, and it is showing you kind of how to make a character from a sketch. Like, you don't have to do perfect professional turnarounds. You can build something from an idea. Obviously, it's good to know how to make something from turnarounds. That's more like career in a studio situation. But that's for me easier than having to do it from a sketch, because, you know, when on Danny's Moho rigging course, which is coming out at the start of September, we talk about, or she talks about, the client, i.e. me in this situation. I give her a design to work with. And I was like a bit sort of like casual about it, like I didn't put a mouth pack in or a full hand pack and stuff. And then she's saying, like, you know, I'm kind of like a client in that situation because I don't necessarily give everything. There's certain things you'll have to, as an artist, kind of fill in the gaps and do that, and that can be part of your job. So for me, having a sketch and being able to take something that is maybe just a drawing, you go, do you know what, I want to animate this. That's kind of what I'm trying to do with this. And then if you've got all the information, it just makes it easier the more you have. So so I put some bits in. I did actually end up moving. If you watch the end of the second one, I had drawn it over here and I wanted it more over the middle. So I'd started to put these, like this hair piece has got a rotation point in the middle. We've got our eye here set up. I did remove the deformer from the eyebrow because I'm going to show you how to do the deformers and bits again. And I've just done one eye for now. So what I'm going to focus on is setting up the eye, the nose, and the mouth, which is kind of similar in a way to the eye. The main thing I want to go through is how to use, you can use art layer filters, which are these things, where you search for like line art and it filters out these little letters down the side. These are the art layers, so they're kind of like different layers. If we go to the drawing tab, we can see what's on each layer. So you've got 4 by default. Every time you have a drawing, every frame, you've got 4 art layers. So think about it like line art, color art, shading, highlights. Traditionally, that's what it would do on cell. So we can use those layers, we can adjust them, and we can use the art layer filters to move them around and make them interact with one another. But one of the cool things we can do is because we can't, the art layers, we can't like animate them, they just filter things out. So they follow what is happening to the parent peg. But we can also copy and paste the drawing itself. And in here, in the drawing tab, you can turn on and off the visible art layers. And you can also see here where you can turn it from vector to bitmap and so on. And then you can add, so you get another one of these and you can add its own peg, and that will give you the option to be able to animate it. So that's useful when we create the mouth. We can have the tongue on an art layer, or, you know, something within the mouth on an art layer. And that allows us to add a peg to it and means we can move the tongue without having to kind of like, if we change the mouth, we have to then sync it to another drawing because the tongue's going to disappear, or maybe the tongue changes when the mouth changes. There's lots of useful reasons to keep everything within the art layers in one drawing, mainly because the fact if people are drawing new mouths, they can see it all when they click on one drawing. They don't have to go jumping around different drawings, so to speak, because even if you've copied and pasted these, all the art layers will still come back together when you go into the drawing tab mode. Okay, so let me get cracking. Well, first of all, we'll re-add this deformer onto the eyebrow. So deformers are the rigging tool. Hi, Andrew. Nice to see you here. And then with the tool properties, I have the envelope mode, but I'm going to use it like a line. And that's cool. Now, that's the basic. We normally, when we're creating curves, we'll draw it straight, and then it gives us more range. If I press the render, it's going to be pixelated, but basically those little slight steppings you can see there, that is just the preview of the vector, kind of like the OpenGL of the program. So you can always add more if it's like a big deal, because you're seeing lots of kind of boxy line. You can use the white contour editor to add more shapes in here. If you press Control or Command, every time you add another point, it smooths it off. The reason to not do that, obviously, is if you are making a line for animators to be able to edit, or somebody to edit in the future, it creates more points for them to edit. So it's a bit of a trade-off. Generally, I will only do that if it's a real issue with how much complexity it's creating, and I need to see the preview looking better. So that's one way of doing it, which is just the standard way, really, envelope modes or curvelopes, because it's a straight line like a curve, but using the envelope, which allows us to move the root point without moving both of them, which if you were to use the curve mode, when you move this initial point, it would move both, okay, or everything. It's an older way of using the software. So we've got that one. I'm going to show you the envelope mode itself. It's closed, going all the way around the eye. And then I'm probably will show you some new things they've added to the software, which is really interesting. You can use pegs to create deformers in a way, but without actually adding any actual deformers to control. It's very helpful when you're moving something complex or you want more control over things. You can create like non-rendering UI points that you can click and drag and move around. So it allows us to, for example, you could make it so that these 2 points could be moved together. I mean, you can just shift click them and you get the same effect, but you can do it with an actual button, and you don't have to click show controls or show deformers all the time, which is these buttons up here. I think maybe still the uptake is a little low on this in rigs, because everybody knows how to use this method, and it's not that slow, and it's still pretty stable. But if you are creating something where you want to control multiple points at once, or just bend a shape without using a deformer, then you can use the new modes. What I'm going to do, though, is we're going to create some, let's just go to the eye. I'm going to create some eyelids. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create, like if we look in the drawing here, we have the eye outline on the line art layer, and we've got nothing else because we've got no color art right now. So I could, if I want to show you this method, I'm going to for this example, put the top eyelid and the bottom eyelid in the art layers. So I have the line art, the color art for the eye shape itself, and the color will allow me to use that as like a cutter, like mask, to cut out the eyelids. You could separate them out if you want to, and that can give you more control. I like to keep them contained if I can, because when you change the drawings, you can make it so that obviously the eyelids blink. So you can have a blink sequence by literally switching the drawings and just going next, next, next. It stops the animator having to manually key the eyelids or the blinks all the time, which can take up a lot of time. Okay, so that's what I'm going to show you here. What I want to do is, first of all, in the drawing tab, cut that and paste it onto the overlay. Then I am just going to fill it with a white color, and then I'm just going to cut it and paste it on the underlay. I did that manually rather than using any sort of like fancy tools over here because I don't need to. And then I'm going to put the eyelids on the line and the color. So it doesn't have to, the line doesn't have to contain the line, the color doesn't have to contain the color art. These are just hangovers from when Toon Boom was Opus, I think, and it was an ink and paint piece of software. Now, let's get this back up. Oh, that's chunky. Not sure about that. Where are we? Pencil. Still too chunky. I'm on auto. You see how it's filling it in? This thing is turned on in tool properties. Okay. So let's just create something that is going to cover the whole eye. I don't want to make this massive, like too big, because I am going to put a deformer on it anyway to give myself the option. That actually is weirdly, looks like the wrong thickness. I think it's because I drew this one. So let me just see. If you want to ever find out the thickness of a line, if you just go to it, strike through with it, or select it with the black arrow. There we go, it's 4.7. Let's make it 5, just for ease of life. Okay, that's optical illusion there. Sometimes if it looks thicker, but it says that the size is the same, just check your minimum size isn't sort of like set to something weird. See, I've got like tapered thickness. I drew it with tapered thickness. If I was to select uniform thickness, oh, that's rough. Don't like that. 5. That will reset it to a uniform thickness because I might have drawn it with pressure sensitivity. So back to our eyelid. We have the top one here. And this is why I like to work, as long as you know what you're clicking on in the art layers, this is why I like to work in the camera view because I can see everything I'm doing. So you have to remember what layer you're on. So I'm pasting that in the color art layer. And again, you don't need to worry about these being perfectly aligned or anything like that, because we are going to have deformers on them. If you make them too big, when you click on anything in the eye that's linked with art layers, it will make a massive like bounding box, so it's kind of annoying to move things around when it just doesn't look very visually appealing. So you can only really do this like art layer combined thing when you've got something simple. Like if you've got the hair is a classic example. You'll see in my design, the hair sort of overshoots the shape of the head. But if I have a big piece over here for the back and it's all part of the same art layers, even if I click a small piece of the hair, it's going to give me this massive box, selection box. And I'm not a fan of that. So depending on if it makes it much easier for your animators or you when you're animating, I would normally try and avoid that. So we've got our outline, this, and the fill. Cool. We're just going to, what did I make my design color? Kind of like a normal pinkish color. Let's just call this skin. In fact, let's call it eyelid because it might be different. We'll go to here. Let's go with this for now. My dog obviously finds me very relaxing because he always falls asleep. He's dreaming now in the background, so it's going to be interesting. I often wonder what dogs dream about because one time it was like he was dreaming about why his feet were running, and then he sort of like was kind of like wagging his tail, and then he was acting as though he was eating something. So I was like, maybe he's chasing a squirrel. He catches the squirrel, and then Wilson. He's having a bit of a dream, but he's woke up now. Okay, so I've got some eyelids in there. And so now it looks a bit of a mess on here, but we need to do some stuff in the node view. So I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger. Where's that eye? It's here, right? Okay. What I like to do sometimes is just select this drawing node and press Command or Control G and group it, because then it makes the eye sort of all self-contained, so we don't have to keep moving things around. And we can go inside, and I'll probably just add a composite. Hold down Alt or Option to snap that into there. So this is our eye, and we've got, if you remember, on the overlay, we've got the outline. On the underlay, we've got the fill, and then line and color is top and bottom eyelid. So for the eye shape, the round bit, we're going to use a filter. So there's the overlay and the underlay. You just press the return key with your enter key with your mouse over the node view. It brings up the search box. Start typing overlay, underlay. You do need to know what they're called, which is part of the learning curve of Toon Boom. Once you've got, I always say, once you understand like a few terms in Toon Boom, it is so much easier to know and learn and practice with, because I find as a piece of software, sometimes they use terms that I'm not used to. Like when 2D animation started going digital, everyone got used to terms that weren't quite like animation. And then Toon Boom has some very animation-y kind of terms in there. Like line art, color art, that all makes sense. But then it has other things like the rigging stuff, node, inverse kinematics, which obviously people know about nowadays, but like you tell that to a traditional 2D animator, they'd be like, what are you talking about? So there's a lot of things to learn about in what is quite a complicated piece of software. Overlay and underlay filtered out, but and we're going to probably give this a peg as well, Command or Control P. And that's going to allow me to put a deformer between these, yeah? But what I want now is I want to copy just normal Control C, Control V for vector, copy and paste. And I'm going to give this, I'm going to rename this eyelid top, and I'm going to turn off in the drawing tab. So I was clicking that yellow box, or you can press Shift and E to bring up layer properties. I'm going to turn off these art layers. You see when I'm turning them off, you can see them disappear. So that's like kind of built-in art layer filters, but it gives us the option to still have a peg, right? Let's connect. I'm just thinking, should I connect from the top peg, or should I connect from, I think we will go to there. So what I'm thinking of there, it's been a while since I've done some rigging like this. If I connect to the eye within here, every time I move the circle, it will move the eyelids as well, which can be useful for speed, but it also has a flexibility issue in that if I'm just squashing something, I have to make sure that I use the deformers. So I could connect it to this, but then I've got a top peg on the outside. I think I will connect it to that actually, because I think I probably would do it with the deformers, and I can use the top peg for other things. That's how I used to do it anyway. And then I'm just going to copy this one again, Control C, Control V. So we do the normal paste. I said in the week or session 2 video, we did the normal paste because normal paste allows us, it clones things. So it clones the timing. So that means that if I change the drawing of the eye, it's going to change the eyelids as well. So that means I can create a blink, and I can just pre-animate a blink, and but then I can still have the eyelids individually movable and animatable and keyable. It's up to me if I want to use which one. Press Control P, create a peg. Okay, now every time you do this, you have to, this is the reason to move things a bit more central. Just going to move the pivot, which is using the rotate tool, which tells you the shortcut, Alt or Option and 3. And you have to go right over this, get a tiny little P over the central pivot thing and allow you to move that. Again, I'm not too bothered myself about putting things bang in the middle, because when I go to move them, sometimes I want to, like, unless you have easy move drag turned on, you don't always get, you need to be kind of near that central point. So as long as it's roughly in the center and it makes sense to you, that's okay. So now I'll be able to move this around. You see what I'm talking about, the bounding box? It's not a big deal for me here, but if you were like, I really want that bounding box to be perfectly around the eyelids, I would have to not use the art layers. I'd have to make whole new drawings to make it work. I'm going to create some deformers for these eyelids. So easy way to do it is go to the drawing tools, beg your pardon, animation, envelope creator, create envelope, 4 points, create. Oh wow, that's weird. Oh yeah, because it doesn't. I forgot. It doesn't like it. I can't remember if it doesn't like it just because it's connected. Let's try again. It doesn't like to do this. I think it has an issue with envelope creator if it's part of, if it's an art layer thing, which it still does. So, because what it's doing is it's looking at all the shapes. But that's kind of a handy one, if you've, especially if you've got like a rectangle or something. You could use that. Or you could do it manually. So click, drag, click, drag. We drag backwards. And then hold down Alt or Option to close it. Again, Alt or Option to kind of adjust these handles. You can get really into the nitty gritty of the place these handles and things, and I think it's hard to kind of, you know, fight over where the best place is, because it changes depending on the animation needs. The rule of thumb though with Toon Boom deformers and things is that you want to be stretching things outwards, not compressing them inwards, because when you compress things, they kind of all smush up and look weird. So we don't really want to do that. I always change my deformer groups to being DF as well, because they're really long, the group. I'm going to press this hide all controls, Shift C, and then I'm going to draw this one. You have to be very careful when you're creating things, deformers, that you don't accidentally click and create new deformer points. That you don't want, and then always remember to click the last thing that you made if you're adjusting things, otherwise it will create a point from whatever you had selected. So if I had this one selected and I click, it's going to make a point from there. If you are interested in this process and you're like, oh, I'm really enjoying the look of rigging, we do have a course. It's a lot of lessons. It goes into much more depth than what I'm doing right now. This is just giving you a free version and a taster. Obviously with the course you get to ask me questions and you get support and things as well. So you're paying for my time basically, and me to personally tutor you and have more structure to it rather than me just going through it live. But here we are. So how do we make it so that the eyelids kind of are cut by the eye shape? Well, because we have the underlay separate, we can do that, but we're going to have to just adjust things a touch. So we've got a bit more room. So I'm just going to copy paste this composite. Composites don't hold timing, i.e. you can't animate them, key them, so therefore you can just use a normal copy paste. I'm going to call this eyelid comp. It might seem really over the top to label all your composites and things properly, but it will save you a lot of headaches in the future, and it is, to not label them is the equivalent of like new layer 1 to 530, final. It's all that kind of stuff. It's that laziness doesn't pay off normally in the long run, especially if you ever submit a rig for somebody to look at, for a job. I've looked at people's rigs for hiring before, and if I see that in there, that is normally, I think they've been rushed, but yeah, it's not always a great sign. And it's an easy one to fix. Right, okay, so I basically dragged another cable out from this underlay and popped it into the cutter, this mask port. Now I can double click and it'll invert it on this little Venetian mask thing. And you see how that one's slightly bluey purpley colored. It goes underneath this line. If you don't use the color and the line split, it will kind of half intersect because of the strokes of like the vector. So now we have a pretty swish. That's going to be R. R is the shortcut to reset a peg, but you have to be on that peg when you do so. So it's kind of like not always the most useful, which is why we generally save poses into the library or the timeline, because then you can reset lots of things at once, or set them into the default pose. Now we have the problem of the pupil is on the outside, so I'm going to chop that, cut, and pop it in here. If you're ever moving things around and you detach something and then you go, oh, okay, why is this shape changing when I do this? Like if you were to disconnect the eyelid bottom and it changes size, it increases or decreases, it means you've probably got some scaling on a peg, like a top peg. So maybe you've scaled down the head and the default size is larger. So that's why when you're drawing things, you want to bring them in kind of like the correct size that you're going to create them. You don't want to be scaling down with pegs and so on in your default rig, if you know what I mean. This can, I mean, it's doable and it's workable for like your own production, short film, what have you. But when you get into TV work, people start to like pull their hair out about it, because what happens is it's very easy to get inconsistency in character size. If you bring in one character and another one, and they're just brought in at default size, but actually you've resized one of them, nobody really knows what you did to do that if you've eyeballed it. If it's a 20% resize, even if it's written down, that's another thing that somebody has to remember. And that mistake, if it's missed on three shots in a 100-shot episode, it's 3% error on sizing, and then you're producing an episode a week, and it gets through unnoticed by the animation director or someone like that. Supervisor gets to edit, and then it comes back, and it's a massive headache. So that's why everyone gets like quite over the top about being precise. So you normally draw a character lineup, you make sure it's correct. When you are putting it in the scene, you build everything to that correct size, and then you resize according to shot and where the camera would be and so on. So we've popped that pupil in behind the eyelids. Now if I move this out of the way, there it is. And we can obviously create, I've got a shortcut set for my show current deformer here. So that allows me to easily make a couple of changes. The pupil is just going to be filled in with black. Cool. Okay, so that might look super complicated, but it's pretty straightforward. What I was saying about R for reset. So if I wanted to reset this deformer, if I press the letter R with my mouse over the camera view, it does nothing. If I press B, and it goes to what I call the invisible selection, which is selecting the deformer here. Press R, it does nothing. If I press B again and press R, it does nothing. If I'd moved it down, it would move it back up. That's the reset. So what we need to do to reset things is we have to press this one up here for reset the deformer when the deformer group is selected. And then you also have to reset the peg. That's why what's useful is to have kind of a whole selection of keys on the timeline or in your library that you can just drag in, and it gives you kind of like default face or default front pose, and then you can copy and paste things from your default character or some some golden poses, as they'd call them, and yeah, it would help with kind of like quickly getting stuff into the scene. Just saw Noella said, how do I pronounce that? Is it Noelia or is it Noella? I don't know if I'm saying that correct, but anyway, so she has said, so with an eye rigged this way, is there really a need for a drawing substitution? That's a good question. Yes, but no. So you don't need to add a drawing substitution, but you can if you want to create an easy blink. So something that you can just literally press the right square bracket or left square bracket and cycle through. And so this method that I'm doing here, which is, it's relatively common, it will give you, I mean, the preview is not amazing, but it's going to give you stuff to work with. So let's just press B, reset that. Okay, so this is like the default one, is the eye is closed. Now, if I was to click on that, this is drawing number 1. The first pronunciation was right. No, so Noella. Okay, Noella. Cool. Perfect. So yeah, basically you can use this, like for example, it's closed right now. Do I want that to be my default one? Probably not. So let's add some more drawing substitutions. I'm going to press the letter O on the timeline. I'm going to just simply have to press duplicate drawing once, which gives me drawing number 2. And that's cool because I am going to say maybe this one. Let's think about this. I want the first one to be open, with the eyes open, and then I want the next one to have the eyelids slightly closed. Hello from Bosnia. Hello, Bosnia. I feel like I'm on Eurovision. And then, yeah, so I'll probably want the second one with the eyelids slightly closing and maybe animating. Yeah. So again, if I want to do that without the pegs, as in like I have to animate them down, I'll have to move the drawing itself and redraw the deformer. There's a downside to that you can't have the deformer animate over time, because every new drawing is a new deformer. But in my experience, that's not normally what you would use a blink for. So the blink would just be something that animates, on and off. Let's just go through this example. So we have, this one's going to be open, 1, 2, maybe. We're going to do the blink. And then we'll go to, let's say, 3, which I'm going to drag down a bit. This is going to be my one with the eyelids kind of like partially open, with the deformers on. Okay, well, maybe we'll just keep it closed like this with the deformers on. So how are we going to change this up? Well, let's go to the drawing substitutions tab. So this is really handy. They added this in. It allows me to quickly see what I'm working with. So I'm just going to shrink that down a little bit. And for frame 1, I'm going to have the eyelids off. So let me just hide this. And I'm just going to delete them from this frame 1. Cool. So frame 2, I've got this light table wash on quite high. Let's turn top light off so I can see what I'm doing. Frame 2 is maybe going to be animating through. And this 3 is going to be like the one where they're closed with deformers on, the one we just created. I'm going to rename this. So 1's going to be open, 2's going to be partially closed, 3's going to be closed, 4's going to be like slightly open, and 5 will be open again. And that will be our kind of like our loop of our blink. So this is going to be 6. And I'm going to click this little padlock. I'm going to rename this 6. Yeah. And then let's just duplicate this. Duplicate. Wicked. and then I'll hit this padlock back on. I'm going to hide the deformers for now because that's going to confuse a lot of things. Normally I do the drawings first, add the deformers later. You'll see why it's a little bit more fiddly doing it this way, but it'll make sense. Because we still have deformers associated with this, but we don't actually have the drawings, so I have to tweak that. But it's cool because I'll show you how. So let's do these bits. This is going to be quite a basic one. So let's go for here. Partially coming on. And then I've got my, I want that to be drawing too. That's annoying. I've got this little it's a tiny little sort of hide parameters view thing. Very bottom corner is a little blue cog thing. And it shows me what the drawing number is down here as well, if you don't have this open. You really have to pay attention to what drawing you have active when you duplicate them. So this is going to be 3. That's cool, they're going to be closed. And then this is going to be 4. And then this one's going to be quite open. Let's just pull this one up. Cool. So, I kind of want to make it so that it's quite closed in this first one. And we can definitely add more frames if we want to. And then this one is going to be 5, and 5 is going to be off. I'm actually going to delete them. If you delete them, it stops people animating them and then messing up the blink sequence. Yeah, so it's just like one less thing that an animator can do wrong, because they rarely read the instruction manual, definitely when they start getting used to it. And when a production's underway, everyone's like, you come on mid-production and you just hit the ground running. You don't read like documents from riggers. It's even though you meant to. Cool. Okay, and I'll leave this one closed because it makes it really clear that the closed one with the straight line is the one with the deformers on. I could put like a non-rendering thing in there if I wanted to, but that's fine. I know what I'm working with. So I need to have deformers on these if people want to tweak them. You could go through each one, add deformers, but I'm not going to do that because I actually just want to show my deformers. And I'm going to just go into the... Oh, we need to add one first. That'll make life a lot easier. So you can see the sequence we've got there. I'm going to make this a little bit larger so we can see what we're doing. So let's just say we only want deformers on frame 6, which is this one, because the rest is just going to be kind of like, just going to curve it myself. So press Command and then holding Alt to kind of curve it a little bit. Oops, wrong button. So I'm going to just stick to this default curve, which is why, if you wanted a more complicated or nuanced rig, you could put deformers on all these. But this is more of a quick thing. And then we'll go back, we'll change to this one, Control or Command, hold down Alt or Option. Oops, that's done the wrong way. Same again, Control or Command, Alt or Option. So yeah, that's kind of like slightly over the edge. So just select the point, Shift, move it down a bit. You could obviously still move these because they are pegs. I'm just not putting deformers on them. Otherwise, we'll be here until Christmas. And the important thing is, when you build a rig, if you create a deformer group and you create drawings in the peg system, that's like the the skeletal structure. It's giving anybody who works on the rig in the future the ability to build more deformers and drawings into it, and it's not going to upset the rig structure. So it should paste, copy and paste. So you shouldn't need new versions to hold that information. Deformers are a little bit more hard for the rig to remember when it's been changed, but it's not going to like break the thing. It's not a big structural change. It just probably won't paste across. Okay, so we can see we've got deformers. I'm going to add this one as well. So let's just see what we need to do. We've got deformers showing on all of these, and I only want it to show on frame 6. So to do that, I need to go, first of all, I'm just going to go to the first frame, and I'm going to press this button, create new deformation chain. That gets rid of that one. I'm going to do the same for the eyelid bottom, create new deformation chain. I'm not actually going to create a deformer. And the reason I do that is because inside, let's go in the top eye. What it did is everything was ungrouped, but as soon as you create a second, so more than one deformer, it puts them in little groups. And that's the second one I've created here. So I can just unplug that if I want to neaten things up. So that's it's called transformation. So that's transformation 1. And because I'm only going to have one deformer, it's fine. If you were going to have one for each frame, you want to do your deformers at the end. And I would tell you, even though I showed you the wrong way, I would tell you to delete these and start once you've created all your drawings, just because you kind of want the transformations to match the drawing numbers. It makes more sense that way to somebody, especially if they switch them around later on, which they shouldn't be doing. But like for transformation 1 to apply to drawing 6, it's just another thing that somebody has to remember. So we've got transformation 1 in here. That's all good. I'm going to check in the eyelid bottom again, unhook that. If you ever do one of those like unhook things, the cable, and it leaves a little square, if you just pull it again, it'll sort it out for you, and it'll get rid of it. So then we need to go, I'm going to go back into the top one, and I'm going to go into this little yellow box, transformation switch, and this in here tells me what the transformation is applying to. So transformation 1 is applying to, we created a blank.
Okay, I found this on the web for transformation.
Well, my phone is having a fun day today. Apparently, I said the S word to Apple there. Okay, so transformation 1 is, we created a new one, but we didn't actually draw a new deformer. Yeah, deformers, transformations, same sort of thing. And then I'm going to remove all these other drawing references. So it's only drawing 6. I'm going to do the same for the eyelid bottom, drawing 6. So now, if we go to, let's just have a look at this. Press the letter O. There's drawing 6. So we've got deformers turned on. We can see how that's going to apply. But then as we scrub through, we have our blink. I mean, I could create another one in there, to be honest. Okay, let me show you how to do that. Just there's like an extra step of thinking that has to go on when I'm doing things live. Let's duplicate this drawing. It's going to create drawing 7, which we don't really want it to be drawing 7. So we'll go back and we'll rename. Let me think about this. So drawing 7 we want to be kind of like 5. 5 we want to be 6. 6 we want to be 7. So I'm going to just turn off the padlock, rename, or Command D for B for now, and then rename this one 7, and then rename this one 6. You could do it with the X sheet if you want to be much more organized. You can rename according to, like, if you lay them out in the order you want on the timeline, you can then rename them according to the frame number. But for me, this is pretty fast because I've been showing you this already. I now need to just double check my association in here is actually 7. And we'll go out of that one, go in here. Because we've changed the one where it's closed to being number 7. And then see how drawing 4 and 5 are the same. So we're going to bring 4. I'm going to bring 4 up here. So, cool. So it's a good question, Noella. You asked 2 questions. I missed one of them. So yeah, first of all, we have our. If we go to our library, you can see in here as we go through the frames. I think I might actually want those to be a little bit closer. But yes, so the first question, let's just save that before we get a crash. The first question is, will there be problems in animation with multiple deformers? For example, there are deformers in each drawing substitution for the blink, and an animator uses the blink animation and deformed it into the animation. Yeah, so I think what you're talking about is if the eye is like partially closed and then closed, and the animator uses the deformers, and maybe it's curved up on the partially closed one, and then it's curved down on the closed one. I mean, if it's frame by frame, so there's not going to be enough time to interpolate or tween. But if you had one on frame 2 and one on frame 10, they won't tween because they are different drawings with deformers on. Okay, so for it to tween, the deformer to tween, you need to keep the same drawing with the same deformer. Only then can it work out how to interpolate over the 2. Right, so that would be the system where you have a one eyelid maybe for the top, and it's got a deformer on it, and then you key it into position and you adjust the deformer, and then they're going to be keys on the timeline using the same drawing. They would then tween, which gives you more flexibility, but it's not as fast to quickly put in a blink. You can't just use drawing substitutions. You have to like go and copy the keyframes for it from maybe the library and paste them on the sublayer correctly. Or if you want to, you can use a master controller, which basically is a quick way of pulling back those things. And when you slide it, it will place the keys on the timeline. They're quite easy to do. I'm going to do this during this rigging character rigging live thing and show you the basic way of doing that. The only downside of like master controllers and stuff is that they do add complexity to the rig. So it would be useful for something like a blink because it's heavily used, and you could have it in a control panel over here, but it's just extra stuff the animator has to have up or has to see, and for them to kind of like scrub along to pick the right blink level. It's not a big deal to do, but it's just another thing to do. I'd say it's worth it with a blink because they're so heavily used. But yeah, there's other things. Like I've seen people with controls to move the pupils around. But if the pupils are simple, you can just shift select them and just move them about. And I don't really like to, I think a decent animator should be able to know when the pupils are kind of like in contact with like breaking the fourth wall or looking at something directionally. Sometimes you can do different things with pupil spacing to convey thought process and things. So if you automate that, it can sometimes be a little bit like it removes the creativity a touch. But yeah, something simple like pupils, probably leave it off. Something that could be complicated, like the peg version of the eyelids that you're talking about with deformers, probably use a master controller. Yeah, Toon Boom interpolate between drawings. So Toon Boom can't tween drawings per se. It can tween deformers because that is something kind of like pegs. And there are other ways of doing it to make them tweenable and in-betweenable. It's just worth remembering that sometimes people put deformers and things onto rigs because they think, oh, it'll be easy to just animate it then. But 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100 in a professional animation situation or anything of like decent quality, once I mean, barring the initial pose being posed, obviously from scratch most of the time, there might be some time savers of things that are brought in to help speed the initial posing up, like a master controller to get the head angle right. And it depends on the complexity of the rig. But the deformers and the tweening and stuff, they're rarely just like left to what the computer gives you. Nearly always the animator goes in and tweaks it, and has to, because it's just not good enough. The computer doesn't know the nuances of human movement and emotion. It's like that's why AI is just a million miles away from where we are really, with high quality things in film and TV and games and everything else. So it can be a time saver, but it's important to, like, when I'm rigging, especially with like my rigging animation hat on, I'm always thinking, is this really going to save me time, or is it just going to kind of look fancy but just going to get in the way, Okay, cool. So we've got an eye. We've only got about 10 minutes left. So what I'm going to do instead, the mouth is very similar, by the way, to the eye in terms of how we do the layering split. I would use the overlay for the line, the line art layer for the teeth, the color art for the tongue, and the underlay for the fill. And then I draw all the mouth shapes, and I'd make it so that the tongue is movable. You can make it so that the teeth are movable as well, even though they should be fixed to the top of the skull and the jaw should be the thing that moves. It's useful to give it that option, because if you need to kind of like slightly fudge it a little bit because you've positioned the mouth wrong, but you want to make the teeth match up, so everything else is wrong. Everything else is right, but the teeth are wrong. You can just move the teeth quickly into place. The nose, we would just probably use drawing substitutions, but you can chuck some deformers on here. Let me show you how I would just quickly do this nose. So I'm going to use a close gap tool. I can press the letter K to turn it on, and that shows me the strokes. And then I can use the white contour editor to curve it a little bit. And yeah, again, K toggles the strokes on and off. And then I'm going to fill it with, let's just get rid of these colors. If you ever try and get rid of a color, by the way, in your swatches that's in use, it will give you a warning and say, hey, you're using this. If you do delete it, when you reopen the file, even if you save it, when you reopen it, it will kind of ask you, hey, do you want to perform color recovery? Because it knows the ID and it will try and recover it back. If you say no, it will come up as like this red version. Sometimes that happens when people are trying to get rid of colors, and that's not the proper way to do it. The proper way is to find the color itself inside the scene and recolor it, or whatever you need to do. Otherwise, it's always going to keep coming back and haunting you. Maybe I'll do something about colors at some point. Palettes used to be the bane of most productions' existence, because they people think they've deleted something and then it just keeps coming back. You're like, oh, where is this color? And the palettes just stack up in the color thing. And it's not a big deal at the end of the day, but it can create massive headaches for anybody on the tech side. So I've got this little nose. Do I want to create a deformer? There it is. Maybe we will, just for the fun of it, just to show you something else. So with my tool properties open, the rigging tool, I am going to use this, because I could use this freeform mode, right? But you freeform, let's show you. You just create, it's like pin puppet tool in After Effects. And then you hit the transform tool when you're done. And it kind of like allows you to move things around, but you see how it squashes and thins things out? And then it also moves things on the other side. And then when we go inside it, there's not much in terms of control. It's just literally like that. Okay. Oops, deleted the drawing. Oh no, I didn't. I deleted the connection. I'll come to your question in 1 second. So let's go rigging and use this relatively new one, shape aware deformation. And if we use this little cage, it will do a better job, I think. Let's see if I'm right. You see how it doesn't like mess the line up quite so much? So it's good to give you a little bit more range. And that's pretty handy. And then I think if we were to use the rigging tool, shape away, and we were to use, let's just try this line. Yeah, I mean, kind of like not too far off the actual peg itself, I guess, but it's a nice one to have. So I'm going to just put the, I mean, you could use the envelope mode, obviously, but there are other options. Let me use the envelope and show you that one as well. It's just what there's been a bit of a trend in with Toon Boom stuff, development-wise, is to make it a little bit more user-friendly. With their Harmony 25, they talked about quality of life improvements. Sounds very like lofty, but if you are using this software all the time, it does improve your life if something is quicker. Some of the releases in the past, I've gone like, oh, that has literally saved me hours a week, so it's worth it. But yeah, that's the most flexible one. And you can see what I'm saying about it will slightly wig out a bit when I go too far, but that will, when we render it, it will sort itself out better. So let's just reset that position. So that gives me a little bit more room to maneuver with the nose. And then what I would do is if I got to the point where I'm like, okay, this nose can no longer serve its purpose, like I can't deform it into position, I just have to create a new drawing and press that button again up here, create a new deformation chain, and then I could add a new deformer, and that allows me to go like nose 1 is until here, and then I choose to switch to nose 2 and then deform it, and kind of I can almost like tween between them by covering up the switch a little bit, if that makes sense. So you'll find most rigs will have deformers on most things to give the animator the most amount of options, and it means that it's kind of like as future-proofed as possible. So Noella said, question about the eye. If I didn't want the shape of the eye to appear in the lids, will you cut that as an auto patch instead? I think I know what you mean. Do you mean like you don't want the eyelids to show when you click on the eye? Is that what you mean? Like this? So you don't want that massive bounding box to appear, sort of thing? Because if that's the case, you would just have to create a new drawing for the eyelids that are still, instead of them being inside here, well, they could be inside here, but they still need to be cut by the fill. But if they're a new drawing altogether, they won't create the big bounding box sort of thing when you select it. Pablo says, palette management is confirmed to be a pain in studios. Glad to hear that's still the case. Yeah. Okay, so about the eye, let's figure this one out. If I didn't want the shape of the eye to appear in the lids, I'm not quite sure what you mean actually with that. The lid comes in flat and the top shape of the eyes disappear. Oh, do you mean like the line disappears? You cut the line of the eye itself, because yeah, that would be cutting the circle. Okay, so that's slightly different. So if the circle, you want to cut the circle, and you want it to be, well, let's figure it out. Let's do it. So let's just do the top one. We are going to, let me think about that. No, let's go. Hang on a minute. This is going to be more complicated than I think, because basically I want the. I wouldn't be able to do it now quickly enough, but with only a few minutes left. But if the eyelids is the same color as the skin, yeah, that would be the easiest way to do this. But it's not impossible the other way around. What you would be doing is you would be cutting the overlay with the eyelid. Let's just see what this does. This is what it depends how tired I am on the day. Let's invert that. Okay, so that's not quite working because we need the black line to go further up. So what I was thinking is I would have to separate the line and the fill in here, but I wouldn't need these two separated. Yeah. Is that right? No, I still would need them separated. So because of the pupil, but it wouldn't be the end of the world because if the pupil is the same color as the line, it doesn't matter if it went behind. So basically, if you would have a black pupil and a black line, you could separate the line of the eyelid top. And then, yeah, basically that's the thing that's going to cut here. Because I think you basically want, you don't want it cut by that, you just want it. Let's just try this. Oh, that's the wrong way around. Beg your pardon. I'm getting confused with what I'm doing now. Yeah, so you would want the line and the fill separated on the eyelid, but because you've got two eyelids, you're going to have them separate in drawings, and then you have to do some sort of slight jiggery pokery. You could use auto patch. That would work nicely. You just can't do anything with Z depth if you use auto patch because it messes with it. When you start using Z depth, it breaks auto patch. But you probably wouldn't do that anyway, as long as you've got your layering correct on your eye to start with. Sorry, that's a very confusing answer. It's probably not answered anything at all, to be honest. But maybe we can go into that at some point if you didn't want the line. I'll have a think about it and see if we can do something cool. Okay, so if you are following along, I'm really curious now. I really want to try and do it. I just want to show you how I would copy and paste this eye into this side. It's quite simple. I'm just going to Control-C or Command-C, Control Command V for, B for Bravo, because that's paste special. And then we're going to turn on create new columns, which is like separate timing. And reuse existing elements means that if I add new eyelid drawings, they'll appear in here, but I can time them differently. And I'm going to connect this down to here. Now, a lot of people like to I'm just going to connect it up for now, that'll do. And I can rename all that. A lot of people like to flip the eyes. So, you know, it's just this button. But I'm just, instead of flipping, I am just going to literally move this thing over here. Oh no, I will flip it because it kind of looks a bit odd. Do I have a deformer on that outside eye? No, I don't yet. So I would need to figure that one out first. But you only want to do this when you're definitely sure you're happy with the eyes. Because I don't want to go, oh, I need to add a deformer to this, and then I've only realized, because then I have to go in and manually copy paste it. You want the labeling to be the same if you want to be able to copy and paste across the two. The eyebrow, this should be inside here. So let's pop this in here, and we'll link that one up to the top. Now, a lot of these things, if I'm just doing it and I'm building it, I'm going, right, okay, I'm going to link that up to the top eye peg. So that moves the eyebrow. We go down one. So it gives me the option to move just the eye, press B again, and I can move the eyebrow as well. Yeah, you want to make sure everything's in there, all the pieces that you think you need are in there, because it makes it much easier to then just copy and paste it across. You could obviously manually copy and paste bits across. And yeah, the flip, if the labeling in the group is the same, which it can be because it's on a different level, that allows me to copy and paste like eye poses, which is really handy sometimes. So you can just literally select it, copy, and then paste, and it will work fine. Okay, so that's how you do that, and then that will allow me to kind of like tweak these individually. Now this is obviously going to mess up my blink because I've moved the pegs. So you'd have to make sure that your blink is something that, I know I'm going to have to reset the peg positions if I want to do that, and use the blink, or like we say, we do a master controller. So maybe that's something that I would put in version 2 if I was like, oh, okay, these in process, in actual practice, these blinks aren't, I'm using the pegs a lot, and for subtle eye stuff, I'm rarely just keeping the eyes open and doing a quick blink. So maybe I'd put that in there as well as an option, or just put a master controller in, and it helps reset everything really quick. And so that's what we're going to do today. That is all for today. But what I want to say is, if you want to follow along, I'm going to post the link to this file in the bottom of the video. There's the drawing of the old one in the version 2 if you want to grab that. And if you want to follow along, you can pick up where I am and you can create the mouths. I would say just create the mouths so they're kind of like more front on like this, and then just move them into position because it's slightly tweaked at the angle. You can press Command and Option or Control and Alt to rotate the screen if you want to get your bounding box nice and straight. This cheek bit would probably be something else I'd add later. But yeah, I mean, I'm just reading one of the comments. Yeah, so if you want to add the mouth, that's cool. You could try as well adding the ear if you want to, and copying and pasting yourself. Remember to connect it at the back behind the head on the far right hand side of the character composite, and then it will appear behind the head. Remember, you can always keyframe by holding down Alt or Option and up and down to nudge away or closer in Z depth. So even though the composite left to right is closest to the screen to furthest away, you don't animate these by moving them because that changes the default order. You can animate the Z depth, which you key them back and forth. So that's like not set forever. You can key it out. Okay. What we're going to do next after this is, I'll show you the mouths, the start of the next time. I'll have finished the eyes. Maybe for Noella, I'll have a solution for the eyelids, and then you can have a look at that. And I'll post that one in the chat as well on the next video when I go through it. And we'll go through the hair, because the hair is going to be a bit of a funny one. And we will use auto patch on that just to kind of link it so we don't get this line. And we'll do something cool with the ponytail. I'm not going to do the back of it yet because the character isn't going to have the turn. I'm going to show you how to basically key out the new positions of something when it turns in space. And we'll do the head first, and then we'll do the rest of the body, okay? Because I was originally going to block out the whole thing, but I think it's easier if I show you with the head. Then the process is kind of similar with the body, and you can start going with that. Tim, happy doing the live streams. Sayurita, is Arizona? I know Arizona. My brother used to live there. 6 a.m. Okay. Glad you can join us. Yeah, so the Harmony Rigging class, you're going to obviously know lots of this stuff, but hopefully it gives you an opportunity to ask about maybe some of the newer features or other things. Everything is different with rigging depending on what you are actually trying to build. So every challenge is different. So just how Noella asked about the eyelids here, there's probably like 50 different ways to do eyelids. And I'm going to show you the ones that people ask questions about. So feel free to pass it around. If anybody else wants to join, they can come and ask, and I'll try and solve problems and post the results, and you can have a look at it, see the file. This is just meant to be something where we can kind of all connect a little bit. And let me go back to the full webcam view. There we go, kind of like really small in the bottom corner. Yeah, it's meant to be something where we can connect and share ideas, and people can throw things out there. And I know at the moment with the animation world, it's in kind of a bit of turmoil. Everyone's feeling a little bit shaky. The AI phrase is mentioned a lot, and this is my way of kind of like connecting with people and reminding us why, we kind of need each other, and we don't want to sort of cut corners and take people's jobs from things, because the human side of things is way more enjoyable, creative, produces better results. I'm not going to say that the quick, fast, less human method is not going to become popular. I'm just saying, let's not forget that we are the sum of our parts is more than the. I don't know what the phrase is in there, but anyway, we're better together is what I'm trying to say. And so this is my way of doing that, and people sharing ideas and throwing things out there and seeing what we can inspire creatively to do, maybe projects together or whatever happens. Okay, so if you want to join what are we on now? This is week 3. If you want to join on week 4, we'll be doing the hair, and we'll see some finished sort of face thing. I'm going to do the mouth and show you how I did that as well. And I will probably post a mouth guideline thing, which you can have for free as well, about my basic mouth that I have. And you can bring it in as a template into Toon Boom and trace it up for your characters as well. Okay. Brilliant. Let me pull up this. Okay, well, thanks everybody for watching. I'll just say goodbye. Kind of trying to find out where I am on the camera here. Appreciate you all attending. Just in case you have attended the stuff in the past for tomorrow, we do like a co-work Wednesdays, but tomorrow I'm not doing it because I'm doing an animation demonstration for kids about like how you animate on paper as well, which is going to be fun. So that's in person. So I won't be doing co-work Wednesdays tomorrow, but we're back with the live stream for this next Tuesday. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. And yeah, thanks for joining. And I'll see you again soon. Cheers. Bye.